But where are we going to get all these contact tracers? Should we have, like you did with California did with the Conservation Corps of young people? Should we have a contact tracer corps, even if we call it something more elegant? Should we really build the first public health network we've ever really built in this country around this issue?
I think the answer is absolutely yes. And I love the Massachusetts example. We were able to learn from them. We're all sharing best practices in real time. But this is an interesting point that's often not brought up. We have tracing capacity that predates COVID-19, that goes back to SARS, measles, TB, et cetera. Tracking and tracing capacity that exists in the county levels primarily, and increasing capacity at the state level. So what we're doing is we're building off that existing infrastructure and using the tools of technology to overlay. In addition to that, we're using AmeriCorps specifically. Thank you as a champion for AmeriCorps for decades. We've been able to take advantage of that workforce. Obviously, our conservation corps, what we have now is called Cal Volunteers. In the spirit of Sarge Shriver, we are asking people, thousands of folks, to be part of this new corps, to get trained and to help us with the tracing, because you're absolutely right. The predicate for getting back to some semblance of normalcy is our ability to identify individuals through testing, to be able to trace their contacts, to isolate individuals that have either been exposed or quarantine people that are tested positive. And that's just going to require an army of folks and the capacity of consideration from individuals to allow for their privacy to be impacted by that kind of acuity of attention based upon where they've been and who they talked to.
Oh, yes. Contact tracing. Is that what they're calling it now? Because it seems to me that this is the nightmare panopticon total surveillance grid that crazy conspiracy theorists have been warning about the creation of for decades now. But no, you silly conspiracy theorists, you were completely wrong. That never existed, and you were crazy and paranoid for even caring about it. But, oh, here it is, and it's now called contact tracing. You see how this works. This leads to a remarkably profound and remarkably simple observation about propaganda. Propaganda is PR. All propaganda is, stripped down to its bare bones, is a marketing campaign designed to sell an otherwise unpalatable idea to the public. If it was palatable in its pure form, they wouldn't need a marketing campaign surrounding it. They wouldn't need to dress it up and call it something else and give it a fancy name and introduce it in some PR glitzy way. No, they would just state it openly and plainly. The fact that there is a marketing campaign that surrounds an idea shows you that it is propaganda of some sort, designed to make you accept an idea that you would otherwise be resistant to. And one of the simplest and most effective marketing techniques for unpalatable ideas is to simply name that idea something else, and then present it in a context where it seems to be good. So that you can take something that literally, for decades, for half a century at least, maybe more, go back to 1984. I mean, I know it's referenced every few minutes these days, but it's because it is wildly appropriate for the times that we are living in. People have understood for generations that the creation of a panopticon grid of total surveillance is an absolute nightmare. There is no other way to understand what the creation of such a grid of total surveillance other than as a nightmare scenario. Unless, of course, you're dealing with the event that changed the world as we know it, and the entire rules of civilization are going to have to be rewritten because of the dramatic events that have taken place in Pandemic 1, as Bill Gates has just rebranded, is attempting to essentially market the propaganda campaign around SARS-CoV-2. It's now Pandemic 1, which of course implies there's going to be a Pandemic 2, doesn't it? Makes you wonder what Bill Gates is up to, doesn't it? But At any rate, yes, there is a marketing campaign surrounding Pandemic 1, and one aspect of that is to rebrand the complete and total government surveillance of everything you do, everywhere you go, everyone you talk to, everything you purchase, and everything else to do with your actual physical meat space life. The total surveillance they're going to repackage as contact tracing, which, again, is a term that you've never heard before in your life, so you don't have any pre-associations or baggage around that term. It's not surveillance. It's not some sort of invasive thing. It's just contact tracing. Well, that sounds rather passive, doesn't it? And of course, it embeds with it a million pieces of very, very worrying data, doesn't it? So, yes, the Clinton Global Initiative is just one of many, many outlets that is trying to introduce this idea to the public discourse right now and framing the way that those words are being introduced to the public. So I would invite you, just as an experiment, just type the words contact tracing into a news search, any sort of search or news search that you tend to use. Just type those words in and read some of the many, many entries that are coming out right now, some of which are saying, well, lawmakers have some concerns about the ways that contact tracing could be used by the big tech companies because they might not respect your privacy. But of course, that's coming from the government saying, don't worry, guys, we're the good guys. We'll totally be trustworthy when it comes to tracking and tracing everything you go, everyone you meet. Don't worry, we can be relied on. It's just those big tech guys that aren't, I don't know about them. Well, of course, they're in the back pocket of the government, and government's in their back pocket anyway. It's all one big corporate fascistic stew. But let's disregard all of that, and let's make the debate about who should be entrusted with all the data about everywhere you are going at all times of every day. And only for the duration of the crisis, right? Because they will never, ever again use this fear of some sort of new contagion to flip the switch back on and to re-enable all of the controls that they are putting in right now, right? Oh, of course, that is exactly what is going to happen. Powers that are taken by the government, as we should all know by now, will never be relinquished. They will never give up on this complete and total surveillance of every person in the population at all times once it has been put in their hands. And you would be an absolute naive simpleton who fell off a turnip truck yesterday if you believe that to be the case. So,